was born in Oklahoma. Well, before I was 2 years old, my parents migrated to Bakersfield because of the Dust Bowl. They were promised employment in California. Well, my siblings and I grew very quickly. My parents ended up having 13 children, so I'm second of 13. My parents were extraordinary. They taught lessons that have been with me for my entire life. And it was always, no matter what, you do the best that you can. That was the motto for me when I was growing up, no matter what. I remember the first time my mom had me rake the yard. We lived where there's, we didn't have grass and all, it was just a big dirt entry to our home. And so she gave me a rake and she said, I want you to rake across the yard one way. Then you're going to come back and you're going to rake the other way. And it actually ended up being sort of this chevron pattern. And I was so proud of that. When a bird hopped on it, I was devastated. It had interrupted that beautiful pattern. And so just that little lesson that my mom taught me was that it was a simple thing, but it was very rewarding. And so everything that you do, even the simplest things, can be rewarding. And so take note of that. My family was the only black family, well, through 8th grade for me. And it was so interesting for me because my classmates always said, oh, Shirley, you're so lucky. You get to keep your tan the year round. So that was wonderful until 4th grade. And back then, the principal would come into the classroom and introduce a new child that was entering. And the minute this one little girl came to the classroom, she said, oh, I can't be in this classroom. And the principal said, well, why not? And she said, because there's a nigger in the room. Oh. And so for me, that was my parents had never taught, or I believe it was the first time that I heard the word nigger, and I didn't know what it meant. And so I too was looking around to see who the nigger was. And she, this little girl, had a hard time because she wanted to turn my classmates against me. So at recess time, she says, well, Shirley can't play in this game. Well, my classmates stood with me and said, if she can't play, then we don't play. And so that was the first lesson for me to know that there is good in the world. My high school, of course, was the first time that I had attended school with other black students. And so I was called an Uncle Tom, and because I was interested in government and doing my homework, not partying. So that was a real wake-up for me at the high school level. But I persevered. I was in the government program, college prep. It was called college prep then. I represented my school at Girls State and was valedictorian. Well, during my senior year at the end, Willie Brown had a law office and a partner in Bakersfield, and they offered me their scholarship and introduced me as a debutante. So I was, and I did many hours of learning how to curtsy. And So my parents really had a hard time letting me go. So we ended up staying 2 years in Bakersfield, attending Bakersfield Junior College. That was a wonderful time. I had a radio program called Collegiate Close-Up, and got ready for the big move to San Francisco. When I left Bakersfield, I lived with a family, well, it was a single mother with 2 children. And when my college load got really full, my parents asked if the 2 children, the 2 little girls, could come and stay on the farm. And I call it a farm because we had our own garden that my dad worked on, plus the animals. We always had animals that either were part of 4-H and then part of our family meals. It was hard to eat. And so the 2 girls came to Bakersfield to live with my parents while I attended school. And I think back on it now, my dad gave up his 41 Ford for me to have a car in San Francisco. By this time, my parents had, they were involved with foster care. And even though we had, there were 13 of us, my parents took care of foster children who came that no one else wanted. Wow. They were the ruffians. And so it was hard for us, but my parents had the motto, house of others. So our house was always open, and my mom would always say, there's always room for one more. I was thinking about how my parents were part of the legacy, part of my legacy, because they had 13 children of their own, but they fostered over 250 children. It's recorded that over 250 children or parts of families lived at our home over the years. Always room for one more, and so that's been how my life has been all my life. Room for one more, always. After San Francisco, after I graduated, during that time there were tours for graduating students to visit the areas around for school districts that were going to be hiring teachers. And so the bus that I was on ended up in Mill Valley. It was the first stop in Mill Valley. So I got off. Bob McConnell was the superintendent then. And the business office was above D'Angelo's, if you know Mill Valley. There's a restaurant called D'Angelo's. And that was where the district office was. And when I went in with Bob, he said, you know, how do you feel being in this room with me? I'm a white man, you're a black woman. And I said, you know, I want, because back then there was this thing called token. There were token blacks that were hired to sort of make the quota. And I said, I want to be hired for my ability, not for a token, for my ability. So he sent me to Park School, and the principal there was Glenn Skelton. And he hired me on the spot. And so my first day out, I was hired and had a job in Mill Valley. And I learned later that I was the first black teacher that was hired in Mill Valley in 1965. And so, and then the real trouble started. There were parents who did not want me just because I was black. They voiced, you know, maybe she's not smart enough, maybe her speech is not proper enough to teach our children, and so we don't want her. Well, Mr. McConnell said she has a contract, and if you don't want to be in her class, then you have to not just ask for a transfer to another teacher at the school. You have to go to another, well, you have to go outside. You have to go to another school or not our school.
Good for
high
him.
school. And so it so happened that Mill Valley at that time was involved in working on a desegregation program. So they were going to bus white children into Marin City, which is predominantly black. And at that time, there were parents, not everyone was against me, but there were parents who wanted their children to be involved in the desegregation program. And so it was agreed, not by me, but by the staff, that I should follow the students that were going to be bused into Marin City as part of the staff going there. Well, I get to Marin City, and there wasn't really the kind of support that should have been in place. It was kind of like we'll do as we go. We'll, make the program to work. And so many of the blacks decided that I was an Uncle Tom and that I should not be there. And I was told that I should not come to Marin City after dark if I knew what was good for me. So here I was, feeling the brunt of Mill Valley and Sausalito. And in the interim, the tires were slashed on my car, the sugar was put in the gas tank. I was told that was what destroyed my car. I had tried to get an apartment or a house in Mill Valley, and no one would rent to me. And finally someone did say, we'll rent to you. But before I could move in, this was a house just right near Park School, Mill Valley, right off Blythedale on Manor, East Manor. And the windows were broken, and there was a note saying, we'll burn. And so I decided that I could not live in Mill Valley, and it was sort of closing in all around me because I didn't feel safe in Mill Valley. I didn't feel safe in Marin City. On top of that, my first assignment when I went to Marin City was 5th grade drama, 6th grade creative writing, 7th grade literature, and 8th grade girls PE. And so I figured after that, I did survive that 1 year, that I could teach anywhere.
Yeah,
So,
that's true.
but the program only lasted 1 year because there was a lot of unknowns that became apparent, and it could not go on. I was then assigned first or second grade at Park School in Mill Valley. But before the school year started, one of the teachers that had been on leave wanted to come back. And of course, she wanted that grade. So I ended up having prepared kind of for that class at the beginning of the year, ended up being scrapped, and I was into a totally different grade level at the beginning of the school year. So it was really not a great beginning for me. But the 4th grade class that I had at Park School ended up being a wonderful disguise and blessing for me. And Chris, the first day of school, said, oh my gosh, he said, you know, my mom worked all summer to get brown, and she's not nearly as brown as you. So that was a good beginning for me to have that, you know, that I was okay. When that first year started, I got a call saying that they were doing a campaign for Coca-Cola, and they were wondering if I would be interested in doing an ad for Coca-Cola. And I said, I can't. I'm getting married. That whatever the time frame was, and I said, no, we'll make it so that, you know, your husband and you can travel and be together. Well, it turned out that he couldn't do it, but I was flown to New York, and my photographer was Richard Avedon, famous photographer, and they put me up in the Plaza Hotel, and I was riding a horse in Central Park and so forth. And so this is a picture of the Coca-Cola ad that was done that next year in Mill Valley. And so I look back and I said, you know, I'm grateful that my teachers taught me how to write, because part of the assignment was to write some words in the backdrop. So my cursive looked good. So then after my experience with Coca-Cola, coming back to Mill Valley, there was just, you know, everybody wanted to be in my classroom, because I thought that, you know, or that their kid might, you know, get in a commercial. For a majority of the years, there was, for me, a feeling that I had to be better than the rest to be accepted, or to know that that I was a good teacher, or that I was smart enough to, you know, to teach their children. And my whole, I think, career was shadowed with trying to be accepted and to not have any slip-ups or that kind of thing. And because I would be called out that here comes the token. And it was always hard to not know that I was different because of the color of my skin. And so that, for me, was a driving force to be better than the best, so that I could feel like I belonged. And so I think having had the experience of not being accepted for me and my abilities was a real force during my teaching career. And so the Coca-Cola was sort of a real breakthrough and entry for me, because parents sort of thought, well, she's really famous, and, you know, maybe we'll get to be in a commercial with her. And so that was kind of a way of acceptance, but it wasn't for me and what I could do and what I could offer to children. I would often say that my faith in God was a real comfort, and I think without that, I may not have been as successful as I was. And then, not sure how many years into it, over 20 years, I was at Park School all those years, and we got a new principal. And the principal said, I'm sorry, but you're not going to work into the program that I have for the school, because you are heavy on phonics. You're
Oh, God.
and so forth. There were other things, and so I want someone who was into whole language, and there were all these other things. And so he said, and so you're going to Edna McGuire. And it was a middle school, but it ended up reopening as a primary school. So he said, you're going to Edna McGuire, and you're going to be teaching second grade. So that wasn't even the grade level that I taught. So it was like a double whammy, going to a different school, different grade level at the end of the year. And so it just was so unnerving that I really got ill. And so I wasn't able to start the next year. During the summer I was ill. September came, and I have a good friend who set up my class, helped set up my classroom. We had a substitute. And it was a blessing for me, because what was meant to be something that wasn't, going to be a pleasantry ended up being a wonderful blessing, because I had parents who wanted me. It was a wonderful thing. And so for me, I learned that many times blessings come in disguises. And so you never know what's around the bend, but if you've got faith, it always works out. And so going to Edna McGuire School was sort of really one of the best things that ever happened to me. And so I'm really grateful for that principal who sent me to a place where I didn't know I should be. So that was neat. We often do not know how our life is to be lived in a way that is meaningful to others. And so I believe that the way that my life has been lived, that it's a tribute to how one can and should hang in and do the things that are right. And so I look back. I was thinking my beginning time at Mill Valley was that parents were lining up to not be in my class, and at the end they were lining up to say, please teach one more year. And if you talk to anyone that was in my class, they'll say, Ms. Hasley, she's really hard. But I can say that I believe I've never had one child leave my classroom that wasn't a reader by second grade. To me, is part of my legacy that I was able to inspire and give kids a love for reading and writing, and mostly anyone who did not have skin color the same as theirs. Thank you.
There's a mountain that